So we'll start with this one, which is like what does the lacrosse in the Olympics going to mean in Los Angeles in like 2028, right? 2020? No, sorry, I can't remember. Anyway, now, but the so when the Olympics happen, the IOC gets together, the International Olympic Committee, and so there's representatives from every country who's part of the International Olympic Committee, and what they do is they instate new sports into the Olympics. And now we had a little bit of an interesting discussion this week about it. Like some people were kind of like, "Yay for the Olympics!" Getting lacrosse, and others were like, "Yeah, whatever." I can't remember who wrote it, but they were like, "Lacrosse." Um, or the Olympics kills anything that it touches, any sport that it touches, and that's not true. But it does bring up some heated responses, which is kind of interesting. But I will tell you this: one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that the Olympics, in the business of sport, is one where they're trying to gobble up sports. Okay, because this might surprise you, but like the Olympics is a bit of a dying brand. And so part of what you're seeing with like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, and this is more of a North American issue than it is a European issue, but it's still true. Like it used to be like the sport was always bigger than the athlete. So for those of you guys that are in my demographic, we remember, Olympics where, wow, the Olympics happened and they kind of birthed a star. Now, what we have is we have athletes because of social media and their ability to kind of transcend. They can transcend sport, and so especially now with the NIL rules and the NCAA, what's kind of fascinating. I don't know if you guys read like last week there was some basketball kid, and I can't remember where he's. I think he's from California, but he's like the 7th ranked. He's not even the number one. He's like the 7th best kid in his class. But he signed like multi-million-dollar NIL agreements because his social media following is so big. He's a basketball dude. Hey, Chris Inzer, I see you, buddy. Greetings to Rocket and the gang. But the thing, so by the way, if you're one of those parents and you are against your kid having social media, I'm going to encourage you to get over that. Because the truth is that if your athlete can create a following, an audience, there's value to that. Okay. And the bottom line is it's eyeballs. So what the Olympics does as an organization is it buys up eyeballs. Now, lacrosse becomes a sport and it goes into the Olympics as a kind of as a standalone sport, right? It's not like a snow sport. So a number of years ago, back in 1998 or thereabouts, the International Ski Federation, or the FIS, brought snowboarding in underneath its umbrella. Right, snowboarding kind of wanted to go in on its own, but the FIS grabbed it and brought it under its umbrella. The same thing has happened too with gymnastics and parkour. So parkour is kind of wants to be this like standalone thing, while gymnastics kind of gobbled it up so that it can control it and have its rules and also generate like revenue and things like that and TV rates and all that whatnot. So for lacrosse, as an Olympian, I've said this for a number of years. I've like the sport of lacrosse, in my opinion, does not necessarily need the Olympics to feel good about itself, right? Like as a sport, but a lot of people, the powers that be, were like, and it's been around since like the 90s. Like there was like, oh, when's lacrosse going to get in the Olympics? And the Olympics basically said like, oh, hey guys, you got to have a certain number of countries who play. And then, so, the International Lacrosse Association, built we had a lot of, they grew the brand of lacrosse and got a lot of countries playing now. And that's fantastic. But then the IOC turned around and said, okay, listen, we want to have you, but you're too expensive, you take up too much field space, and yada, yada, yada. So that came the kind of the evolution of lacrosse, the change from what we see kind of in the international game and then in the collegiate game. What, as for everybody watching, pretty much everybody watching, we're all Americans, mostly. Some Canadians watch me right now. Some Europeans will watch me on the recording. But the idea here is that in North America, we're used to kind of that collegiate game, and then international rules are slightly different. Okay. But then the idea of sevens came about because the International Olympic Committee was like, okay, listen, we want you, but you need to be kind of smaller and more confined, and that way you take up basically less space, less surface area, less field usage, because the Olympics, as everybody's kind of probably understands, that over the last, ever since like Sochi, uh, the cost of the Olympics got like ridiculous. And then Sochi was weird because in the Winter Olympics, like Putin spent like 50 some odd $billion to run that Olympics, and it just completely skewed everything. But unfortunately, what that did was it made a lot of countries fearful about even bidding on the games. So we had Beijing in 2008, and then we had I never remember them all, but whatever. Like it just escalated up, and then like in Calgary, where I live now, um, Calgary had the 1988 Olympics, and Calgary was a very Olympic city, but they were trying to bid for like the 2026 games, I guess, I think it was. And we had a vote, this was like last year, pre-COVID, and everyone was like, no, it's too expensive. We don't need that. And Calgary's an oil and gas city. And it just created a lot of like anger and angst, which was really weird because Calgary is a very friendly, very pro-Olympic city. But so the idea is that, for the Olympics to add sports, is this like, okay, we'll take you, but it's got to be kind of lower key. So that developed this idea of sixes, right? And which doesn't make sense to me because I think it should have been sevens anyway, because a lot of young programs, a lot of small programs with young kids will play sevens. So why sixes? I'm not really sure, but there's some things I like about it, but there's also some things I don't like about it. So I want to talk about that now, because I'm hoping that by the change to the Olympics, like the Olympic format, it's going to change some things that actually kind of help the goalie position. So for a lot of you, this may or may not affect your goalie. This is kind of more informational and kind of speculative as to where the sport's going to go. But from the goalie position, one of the things, as a lot of you guys are familiar with, I'm very pro the use of protection as a tool. However, and what I mean by that is a tool to basically develop goalies, but also have goalies make more saves. And so, um, this last week I talked again about, the idea that we haven't seen the best goalies play this sport. And there was a mom, and I can't remember who it was, but she was like, well, yeah, that's true in every sport. Like that, we haven't seen the best, like Simone Biles, and we haven't seen, everybody's improving always. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like incremental improvements inside well-established sports. Lacrosse, in my opinion, field lacrosse, in my opinion, the lacrosse goalie position in field lacrosse, in my opinion, is so retarded. And so I like to use this word, retarded developmentally. Okay. And I'm not saying that derogatorily. I'm just mean like, it's just like, there's so many things about the field lacrosse goalie position that bother me because it's of just kind of cultural misunderstandings and just kids stuck in cultural like situations. And I'm not talking like native and black and things like that. I'm talking about the idea of like no protection and kids should wear shorts and take off your shin guards and all that BS. Because fundamentally that argument doesn't stand up anymore, in my opinion. So one of the things, when I get kind of frustrated, kind of pushing that narrative, the other way to change that is if the game changes. And so one of the things that I look at is that when young goalies, right, when a lot of you guys listen to me now have small goalies, young goalies, and the idea playing in front of a 6x6 foot net is that net is excessively large for the size of your goalie, right? But even at the pro ranks, when we think about it, when you look at other sports, right, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the third segment today, but the idea is like when your young goalie gets in front of a 6x6 foot net, and basically everything from above their head, off stick high, and like off stick shoulder is exposed and easily scored on, that doesn't make sense to me developmentally, right? So in soccer, we have smaller nets. Goalies play with their hands up. They can dive. They can do all that stuff. It's evenly all over. It's well spaced. Same thing is true in field hockey. The field hockey goalie has really evolved from now standing from way back in the day when they stood with their hands down like an ice hockey goalie to now standing with their hands up, and that glove is protected. The stick is really kind of a secondary tool, not a primary tool. And then ice hockey is the same thing. So one of the things that is going to happen in the Olympic version of this sport is that there's going to be a much higher frequency of shot. And what I'm hoping is going to happen is that goalies are going to get lit up so badly that they will then realize that the only way that they can make more saves is if they play bigger in the cage or if the cage shrinks. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I would love this if the field lacrosse net shrunk by 6 inches in all directions. And one of the things that would happen when that happens is that it would actually cause goalies to get hit more. And if they get hit more and they get hurt more often, they're going to look to equipment and padding to protect themselves so they don't get hurt. So on one side of the fence, you have me arguing that a tactic that a goalie needs to use is to play further out at the ball, to be more aggressive, to soak up the ball, as a defenseman would if they were in between the shooter and the cage, right? So if we're gonna praise a defenseman who does that, now I know in the girls' game it's a little bit different, but the point is I want that goalie out as far as they can go within the rules to be bigger in the cage and to suck more balls up with their body. Okay, so I'm hoping that the Olympic game brings a bit of that and expedites that conversation. But actually, what it does is it won't expedite a rule change, but it'll expedite goalies going like, I'm sick of getting hurt. I gotta basically pad up my body so that I can withstand the barrage of balls that I'm going to see because of this sixes arrangement. So I hope that that makes sense. The other thing that's kind of cool about the sixes is I do like the restart with the goalie. Okay. Now, one of the things about that in particular is this idea that we do want so I believe that the field lacrosse goalie position is confused. Okay. If you think of ice hockey and the evolution of the ice hockey goalie, is that when we finally got to like Ron Hextall in the 90s, was the first time we had a professional goalie who was really good with their stick outside the cage and then became a threat. And Ron Hextall actually scored a goal in professional hockey where he like basically shot it over everybody. It landed about center ice and went all the way down into a net that was actually open because they'd take the goalie off. The other team was down by 1. They took the goalie off and he scores in an open net. Okay, cool. So Ron Hextall got so good, and then other goalies like Martin Brodeur and Felix Potvin and these guys, they would venture out of the net into the corner of the rink where goalies really didn't go before. And goalies used to use like straight sticks, and then these goalies started putting curves on their sticks, and they could now become an offensive threat. The NHL then implemented rules where the goalie could only venture out so far to play the puck. Now, as much as I like a good goalie goal, as much as I encourage my goalies to be offensive threats, as much as I encourage my goalies not to pass the ball off to a defenseman on the clear, I do believe that we need to restrict goalies. And what will happen then is when a goalie becomes more of a ball stopper and less of a midfielder, right? Because that's really what we turn a goalie into when they get the ball is they're going from a goalie to a midi, not a goalie to like a long pole or a close defender. They're a goalie to a midi, and then we let them roam. But what happens there is now a goalie starts using the argument like, oh, well, I want to run and shin guards make me feel slow. And oh, I got a cradle. So my glove, my bottom hand glove needs to be like, just like my top hand glove so I can cradle. Well, I think what we would find is if we restricted goalies where they didn't really have as much of an opportunity there, that you would see goalies develop, they would advance the, like basically padding. They would advance the demand for equipment for their bottom hand. They and their off stick elbow, things like that. They would just become more focused on ball stopping and rebound control, right? Then, oh, I'm a midfielder who's in the cage trying to stop balls. Does that make sense? Right. So as much as I love goalie goals, as much as I love that, as much as I encourage that, I almost feel like the lacrosse goalie position needs that restriction in order to make the improvements that they need to make that will then make a bump in save percentage. Right. Because right now, every other coach that's online, with the exception of me, is just rehashing the same old BS that's just perpetuating the game as it is, and I don't like it. Right? Those coaches are happy with like a 50% save percentage or a 40% save percentage, like we saw in the NCAA final this year, which I thought sucked. Right? But until we have those changes that basically change the environment, and the goalies have to then adapt to the environment, and everybody will be like, oh, hey, yeah, that makes total sense that you're wearing like shin guards like that or knee protection. Oh, it makes sense that you're butterflying now. I get it. Yeah. So that shin guards, those are helping us. Yeah, we won because of that. Good job. Right? Instead of this like, oh, if you wear shin guards, I'm going to shoot at your shins. Or some stupid, like this goes to my rant in the next segment. But the idea of a coach going like, no, goalies shouldn't come out to block shots. It's like, really? Come on. So, so, um, so Brian Whalen, 0 cents. Am I making 0 cents, Brian, or did I say something that you agree with that also makes 0 cents? Or are you saying that I'm not making sense? Just clarify for that, because otherwise I think you're a jerk because you think I'm a jerk, but whatever. Like, just clarify for me, okay? But I appreciate the comment, Brian. So fill me in, okay? um, so so fundamentally, I don't feel like lacrosse, the sport of lacrosse, ever needed the Olympics. The growth was fine. It's all good. Like we were heading in the right direction. I just don't believe that U.S. lacrosse, like I'm sure everybody at U.S. lacrosse is celebrating that they finally got that inclusion. Yeah, but I'm like, really, we didn't really need it. We're kind of muddying the waters a little bit. But my hope is that by finally getting into the Olympics, that it may force some of these additional changes that will change the position for the better. So, Brian, right? NCAA, when was the last time you saw a goalie benefit for having shin pads? Um, when was the last time you saw a goalie benefit from having shin pads? I can tell you like 1,000 goals that I've seen because goalies don't make saves because they're not well trained, because they're not protected enough to learn how to make those saves efficiently. Brian, this is one of the problems here, is that goalies will argue that, oh, if I wear shin pads, it's going to make me slow. However, there's no proof to that, right? That is just subjective here. And then, as I've said, as I've explained again and again, this idea that, okay, your goalie doesn't want to wear shin guards. All right, fine. Well, let me ask you this. Do you agree that your goalie can get their stick to every ball? The answer to that is no, because at some point the ball comes from too fast for too close. So then the question is this: all right, if that ball is going to your off stick low, corner of the net, how are you going to make that save? Are you just going to let it walk? Are you just going to like let it go by, right? And that's what we see at the NCAA level, right? Like this year, we saw the Duke goalie and the UNC goalie get completely lit up in 5-hole shots. Why? Because they didn't get down in front of that ball with something other than the head of their stick. And so the argument is like, well, shin guards wouldn't have made that happen. No, that's not true. It would, because then when a goalie is protected, they're going to learn how to make that save over and over and over again, like an elite athlete would. The problem is right now is that people think that the goalies that we see in the NCAA are somehow elite, and they're not. People believe that the goalies we see in the pro level are elite, and they're not. They are elite to the point where they have plateaued. They're just trying to be better than they were the day before, trying to move faster to something. And I can show you 1,000 goals where goalies make half-assed moves to the ball with their foot or their shin or their what, or they go halfway down, or they try to get like one knee down and not butterfly like a damn hockey goalie, because that's the more explosive move to do that. So the argument that, I can easily prove that to you, but the bottom line is this: I don't need to prove it to you. Go out and ask that question. One, can you get your stick to every ball? The answer is equivocally no, you can't. At some point, the ball comes from too fast, from too close. You can't do it, right? So then the question is this: what are you going to do about it? Why are you even in the cage if you think that, well, I just can't get my stick there? No, that's not the deal, okay? No, and Brian, this is the deal. It's not about at a younger age it would build confidence. It's the fact that you get in the cage, Brian. You get in the cage and you put your stick down and you have somebody shoot low, and you tell me how many shots you could actually save with your shins. before you tap out and go, no, 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 I'm done. There's a laundry list of people, including guys like Trevor Tierney, who've had multiple surgeries because of this sport, and they regret not having done it. And they cop out and they say, oh no, no, whatever. If it's, to your comfort level, do it. It's crap. Okay. It's crap. So listen, Brian, and you're not new. Okay. You've been around for a while. Go take some video of yourself in the cage. Take your shin guards off. Okay. I don't care if you're 49 and you play with shin guards. I get it. But if you're perpetuating that shin guards don't help to other goalies that are in that point, this is where I'm talking about, is that the college goalies we see are not elite goalies. Okay. They are not elite because they can't train efficiently enough to be elite. Why? Because they're not protected. Okay. All right. So yeah, Brian, that's a good one too. Jonathan, go on. All right. So I don't like, Brian, your attitude, do me a favor, click away. Just click off of this because you're not helping this sport at all. And I think I remember the last time you were in here, and I think I booted you out before because I'm tired of this argument. You are doing nothing to further the goalie position other than hoping the goalie that you have or you come in contact with, that they are somehow tough. Okay. And they're going to be tough. That is not coaching, Brian. Telling an athlete to suck it up, right? That falls into to be honest, Brian, that falls into an abusive coach that would be reported to Safe Sport. Okay, just so you know. So I encourage you to look at those rules and go, I don't care if you were a college goalie, Brian. I don't care if you were a hockey goalie, Brian. If you're having that argument with me, you are not a coach. And so obviously, I'm not here to help you, Brian. Go out and go help your goalies. And when they come to me and they tell me who they came from, I'll gladly help them. But you're not helping the sport at all, buddy. So take care. All right. So, just man, unreal. Just go away. Like, just absolute crap. So Brian McNamara writes, Brian, my son just got done a goalie camp last week, and to see kids who had no protection sitting and not participating because they got blasted in the thigh or shin was very disheartening. Parents paying all that money and your kid is sitting on the sidelines because they didn't want to wear some type of pads is ridiculous. Okay. So yeah, everybody, why don't you guys all write Brian and just Brian Whalen, Whalen. He can probably help you out. If you're kind of questioning the whole shin guard thing, he probably has like more advice that can probably help your goalie further your sport. Because what I can't stand, Brian, is guys like you. Because here's what happens, Brian, is that your level of coaching gets a kid to a point and then they leave. My level of coaching gets that kid to get here and to keep going to the point where then maybe they get to the point where they can understand and continue. So your type of coaching is losing goalies. I have a big problem with that. And you can hear it in my voice. All right. This sport has no time for guys like you. All right. So take care. All right. Jason Edwards writes, Alyssa wore shin guards at AU Futures yesterday. 1 win. Good stuff. Good stuff, Jason. Right? Right? Because you can't. I had this conversation last night with a college goalie. Right? I said, okay, here's the deal. Right? Ask yourself this question. Ask yourself this question. Can you get your stick to the ball? Yes or no? Right? Well, at some point, the answer is no. Then the question is this: what are you going to do about it? Right? So then whatever the answer is to that question, right? Oh, I'm going to put my shin on it, or my foot on it, or my knee, or my elbow, or whatever. Great. We're going to go train that so we can be world class at it. Then the question is, how long can you withstand that? Because what a lot of kids think incorrectly is that, oh, they'll just do it on game day. That's not world class. That is not elite, right? That is not world class. The hope that you're going to do it on game day is the opposite. All right. Like it's the opposite of elite. It's low level thinking. And it's what the sport is like rife with. Right. And it just drives me crazy. So when you send your goalie off to a camp or clinic and they're getting shot on by yet another college kid from 13 yards away from top center, and the balls are to all the edges of the net, and then they go into a game and they take one off the someplace soft and fleshy and they limp out of the cage. Well, that's not training. right? Those are rarities. Those aren't everyday occasions. So my teachings teach kids proper stance, technique, and the ability to play the position, Brian. Well, here's the deal, Brian. You're missing like the most like that's great, but that's like not even half of what a goalie needs to understand. Okay, so good luck. Like I'm glad you're here, and I totally raged on you, so I appreciate that. But you know what, man, you're not helping. Okay, you're not helping grow the game. You're not helping grow the sport. All right, so you can be confident in your abilities, but the goalies that go take your goalies out tomorrow. If you coach goalies tonight, tomorrow, whatever, the next day, get a video camera on them and say, okay, guys, listen, and I'm gonna drop your sticks. We're gonna shoot balls from like 5 yards out, like inside roll, 5 yards out, off stick low. Go. What are you gonna do? Left foot. Great. Okay, coach, we're gonna do that once. They'll look at you crazy, Brian. The parents on the sidelines will be like, what the hell is he doing? Right. And so go, okay, wait. We got one. We got a good one. Great, good one. Okay, now he's done for the day. That goalie's done for the day. Man, it drives me nuts, Brian, man. So yeah. All right. Moving on, shall we? All right, 32 flat. Making some notes. All right. Starting here. Change of manners. All right. This kind of falls into that. This kind of dovetails nicely off of that last, if that last one. All right. But here's the deal. John, it's Rich. Okay, who's that? John, it's Rich. I caught in baseball too, as well as played lacrosse goalie. As you know, both sports get body there. The stick or the glove isn't going to get there all the time. You're going to be able to get good enough and comfortable to stop the ball. Brian, buddy, I have taught several. I love when people go to that one. I've taught several kids that have excelled and were able to make it to college, appreciate different coaching techniques and not just what you think is right. Brian, here's the deal, buddy. Okay. Here's the deal. You're coaching kids to get to college. I'm sharing concepts to get the best goalies we have in this game beyond a 50%, pardon me, fucking save percentage. All right. And if you don't get that about me and you're happy just getting a kid to college, this is the problem, man. This is the absolute problem. All right. Right. The problem is that when you just try to hit the top of the bottom of the barrel, guess what? You're barely going to make it. Right. And your kid. So this is not you put your goalie against any goalies, and I guarantee you, your goalie is hanging on. They're hoping that they don't get hit. Right. They're hoping. And that's what's happening at the collegiate level, man. And so, I'm just done with this thinking, man. And there's a lot of people on here with some phenomenal goalies who agree with me, who look at a guy like you and go, forget it. That guy's wasting time. All right. So, take care, man. Jason Chili, 100%. Yeah. But, Jason Chili looking for 80. Yeah. I teach kids to be the best they are capable. Questionable, Brian. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.